It may very well be the single most serious threat right now to the health and vibrancy of our democracy. It cuts to the heart of just about every major issue we talk about. January 6th, the big lie, voting rights in America, immigration, the COVID pandemic, abortion rights, guns, climate change. Of course, we're talking about disinformation, the war on objective truth, made far worse by a broadening partisan political divide in the media outlets that service one side of them. From the New York Times, quote, there is wide agreement across the federal government that coordinated disinformation campaigns threaten to exacerbate public health emergencies, stoke ethnic and racial divisions, and even undermine democracy itself. The reason the crisis and its solutions are so complex has to do with its circular nature. Not only have measures taken to combat disinformation resulted in projections and reverse accusations of censorship, but even talking about disinformation with those seemingly hooked on it ends up being counterproductive. This now seemingly untouchable problem, as the New York Times describes it, is all around us. Just last night, even after bringing up porn and video games and marijuana, another wild misdirection of blame for another deadly mass shooting, one that would be comical if it wasn't so tragic and dangerous. Watch.
And of course, they're angry. They know that their lives will not be better than their parents'. They'll be worse. That's all but guaranteed. They know that. They're not that stupid. And yet the authorities in their lives, mostly women, never stops lecturing them about their so-called privilege. You're male, you're privileged. Imagine that. Try to imagine an unhealthier, unhappier life than that. So a lot of young men in America are going nuts. Are you surprised?
So the problem with mass shooters is women. I see. Joining us, MSNBC political analyst Rick Stengel, former top State Department official. He has worked around the world to combat disinformation. He's written prolifically about it. Eddie Glaude is with us as well. All right, Rick, what do we do?
Well, Nicole, you said something interesting in the introduction when you said the problem is circular. The problem is the amount of disinformation out there is making disinformation harder and harder to talk about. It's become a partisan issue. I mean, the classic, dictators, authoritarian ruse, which Putin uses, which Trump uses, is to accuse the other guy of exactly what you're doing. And when the other guy accuses you of something, call it propaganda. That's why even the word has become problematic, a kind of lightning rod, just the way people on the right think the big lie is a partisan issue. They think when we talk about disinformation, that's a partisan issue. That's a very, very dangerous thing. But at the same time, and you mentioned that New York Times article, that what the administration tried to do kind of went wrong in the sense that, you create this disinformation bureau at the Department of Homeland Security. That's not a super smart thing to do. When you want to combat disinformation, you want to do it in a kind of bipartisan way. And you mentioned what I did at the State Department. We started something called the Global Engagement Center at the State Department to combat disinformation around the world. We particularly didn't want to put disinformation in the title because it's a lightning rod. But that also speaks to another point, which is foreign disinformation is a lot easier to rally around than domestic disinformation because one man's disinformation can be another man's truth. And that's what we see all the time now.
But, Rick, that's not true. There's only one truth. So it's not, you say tomato, I say tomato. I mean, it feels like part of the problem is that the side on the truth and the facts wants to meet the liars halfway. There's no halfway point between someone who blames mass shooting on bossy women.
Yes, and what I used to say to the folks who worked with me, both at time in the State Department, is there aren't two sides to a lie. But and, Eddie, the professor, will speak to this philosophical issue of what is truth has been something that's been around for the last 5,000 years. I mean, and when one person says truth and another person says a lie, you have to distinguish between the two. What we need to do is that democracies don't function without a shared set of facts. We need to agree on a shared set of facts. So that's why I mentioned foreign disinformation. What the Russians did in 2016 and 2020, when they told black voters, hey, you can vote online. I think we can all agree that that's a lie and that's a disinformation, and we can combat that. But the real place to combat disinformation is not via government, where there are First Amendment issues. It's the platforms. The platforms have to combat it.
Eddie, there's also an intensity piece. I mean, and let's just put it out there. I mean, the person that the Russians are studying to learn how to be a really good liar is Donald Trump. I mean, he's advanced over even the foreign disinformation campaigns that the Russians are famous for. But there is a zeal, a zealousness, and a fervor to the lies that the truth tellers don't match. How do you make more symmetrical the passion behind the truth to try to match the passion behind the lies?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key question. How do we fight as vigorously for the truth and for the world that we think it would be a better world against those who are arguing for what I take to be illiberal and anti-democratic forms of living or ways of living? So I think this is a really complicated story where news and entertainment blurred, where we get crossfire. There's a way in which we could tell a story from the 1970s and the 80s and 90s to now. And we have the complexity of social media and the like. And then we have this ideological moment. Right? Think about what Tucker Carlson said, Nicole. I mean, it's absolutely stupid on a certain level. But he's also trying to get us, he's not trying to, but I think there's a moment where we can begin to pan out. What is he saying in a certain way? Well, a world in which white men reign supreme is collapsing. They're losing their minds such that they want to now murder people. That's what he's saying. The culture wars is the context for mass shooting. That's what he's saying. The grievance and hatred that he peddles is the source of these young 21-year-old and 22-year-olds going out killing babies, killing old people, and killing folks on the 4th of July. Does that make any sense? No, but it does point to something fundamental, that the fabric of the country has shredded, is breaking, we're broken. Now, how do we get at that in terms of the news, in relation to entertainment, in relation to ideological? I don't know. The genie's out of the bottle. How we fix it is going to be a difficult task.